Greetings of the day. Dear students, I, Sabiha Azmi, very humbly take this opportunity to present a paper of my colleague, Dr. Chimamanda Bâ, who is an assistant professor at the Department of English, Ewing Christian College, a constituent college of the University of Allahabad. Her paper is titled Women Voices from Africa. The learner is required to be aware of the socio-political condition of the African countries, and the objective of the unit is to throw light on the progressive women writers of Africa and their will to establish their name globally. The keywords which you will come across are women writers, apartheid, racism, socio, moral and political themes, personal narrative. Colonization brought both racism and exploitation to the African people. This caused prolonged suffering for long periods. But with the decline of imperialism in the decades of the 1950s and the 1960s, the gradual liberation of one country after another began to take place. Native populations began to assert themselves and do well in a variety of fields such as academics, sports, media and cinema. Literature, which had so far been dominated mainly by white writers, saw the progress and emergence of African black writers, both men and women, who wrote about their lives, their experiences, culture, history and various myths associated with them. Many gained international recognition. Since Africa is a continent comprising of many countries, it is especially rich in its variety of customs, traditions and languages. This richness is reflected in the diversity of forms, styles, genres of literature and varied languages that the writers use. Oral literature constitutes an important part of the corpus. In his book, Understanding Contemporary Africa, George Joseph says, traditionally Africans do not radically separate their art from teaching. Rather than write or sing for beauty in itself, African writers, taking their cue from oral literature, use beauty to help communicate important links and important truths and information to society. Indeed, an object is considered beautiful because of the truth it reveals and the communities it helps to build. Several highly acclaimed writers have emerged from this continent, many of the winners of the Nobel Prize. Wole Soyinka from Nigeria became the first post-independence African writer to win the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1986. His works like The Interpreters and the Seasons of Anatomy are widely read around the world. Algerian-born Albert Camus received the award in 1957. Chinua Achebe from Nigeria, author of Arrow of God, No Longer at Ease, Things Fall Apart, A Man of Many People and Anthills of the Savannah, is also a winner of the Nobel Prize, as is J. M. Coetzee from South Africa. Author of Disgrace and Nadine Gordimer, who got in 1991. Some other well-known African writers are Nuruddin Farhan from Somalia, author of From a Crooked Rib, Maps and Sweet and Sour Milk, and Naguib Mahfouz, also a recipient of the prize and author of The Beginning and the End, Cairo Trilogy, Children of Gibalwi and Midak Ali. There are certain themes which recur in the work of these writers. Ali el-Mazari's categorized them and calls them the 7 conflicts. They are the clash between Africa's past and present, between tradition and modernity, between indigenous and foreign, between individualism and community, between socialism and capitalism, between development and self-reliance, between Africanity and humanity. Many writers have written on some other themes concerning social problems such as corruption, the economic disparities in the countries that have newly liberated, and also on the upliftment of women, their rights and roles in the family and society. African writers have written in the indigenous languages as well as other languages in the world, namely English, French, German, Russian, Portuguese, Arabic, etc. They have published extensively not only in the African continent, but also in Europe, America, Asia and Australia. Although there are many big names in the world of African women's writing, three eminent writers, Nadine Gordimer from South Africa, Mariama Bâ from Senegal and Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie from Nigeria, have been focused on in this module. They write about issues that are central to the lives of women, locating in their works in broader social, cultural and political contexts. Framed in the individual lives, questions of racism, autonomy and freedom resonate. The novel raise questions, interrogate and analyze. They are marked by fine craftsmanship and eloquent narrative, expertise, and are an indication of the richness of the corpus of writing done and being done by women from Africa today. Nadine Gordimer was born on 20th of November 1923 in South Africa and lived till the ripe age of 91. She was a writer and was honored with the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1991. Alfred Nobel, who admired her greatly, referred to her as a woman who, through her manifest epic writing, has been of great benefit to humanity. Intrepid in her choice of themes, she dealt with questions of ethics and morality and wrote consistently against racism and apartheid which existed in South Africa. As a testimony to her anti-establishment writings, her novel Burger's Daughter and July's People were banned by the then apartheid regime of South Africa. She joined the African National Congress supporting Nelson Mandela in the days when the party was banned and frequently took part in the anti-apartheid movement against the government in South Africa at that time. She is credited with giving Mandela advice on his famous defense speech of 1964 at his trial when he was convicted for life. She also led campaigns for other issues like HIV and AIDS. Gordimer's works are internationally acclaimed because of their unique focus on the political issues, especially on the moral and psychological tension associated with the apartheid. Thus, racism in South Africa is the pivotal point of her works, with the themes of love and politics forming part of the whole. Her stories are about ordinary people who have to make difficult choices fraught with moral complexities. The portrayal of her characters is much nuanced as their ostensible social identities and the choices made by them seem to contradict each. Her novels include The Lying Days, published in 1953, A World of Strangers, published in 1958, Occasion for Loving, published in 1963, The Late Bourgeois World, published in 1966, A Guest of Honor, published in 1970, The Conversationist, published in 1974, Burger's Daughter, published in 1979, July's People, published in 1981, A Spot of Nature, published in 1987, My Son's Story, published in 1990, None to Accompany Me, published in 1994, The House Gun, published in 1998, The Pickup, published in 2001, Get a Life, published in 2005, and No Time Like the Present, published in 2012. Her debut novel, The Lying Days, published in 1953, is a bildungsroman located in the Transvaal, a mining town near Johannesburg, South Africa, which also happens to be Springs, her hometown. It is a semi-autobiographical novel depicting the story of a young politically conscious white woman, Helen, living in a small town of South Africa which is under apartheid regime. The novel focuses on an area which Gordimer has explored throughout her life, the mingling of the personal and the political, and the way in which individual lives are formed due to the impact of external forces. In Occasion for Living, published in 1963, she intertwines racism and love. The novel is a portrait of interracial relationships which were fraught with danger as they were criminalized by the South African government. It depicts the unsatisfactory marriage of the protagonist of the novel, Anne Davis, with ethnomusicologist Boaz Davis, and her affair with Gideon Shibalo, a black artist. Her novel, Burger's Daughter, published in 1979, is the story of a woman, Rosa Burger, the central character and narrator, who is the daughter of a martyr of South African anti-apartheid movement and communist ideology. Inspired by her communist and anti-apartheid parents, she is inclined towards political activism. In the novel, she is seen to be analyzing her relationship with her dead father. The novel was published in the aftermath of the Soweto uprising, which took place in South Africa and was banned by the government. In response to the ban, Gordimer wrote a pamphlet which was widely circulated. The book has been acknowledged as among the few truly great political works ever written, while Gordimer herself described it as a coded homage to the Afrikaner lawyer Bram Fischer, who was the defense lawyer of Nelson Mandela. Her novel, July's People, published in 1981, features a bloody South African revolution, where everything is a reverse of reality of the South African society of the time. In the story, it is the white people who are being hunted and murdered by the black people. The story deals with an educated white couple, Maureen and Bramford Smalls, whose lives are at risk due to the revolution and who are seeking refuge with their trustworthy, loyal and lifelong friend and servant, July, who tries hard to save them. The novel features various African ethnic groups associated with July, his family and his village and the family of Smalls. It describes the savagery, violence and racial hatred that mark the actions of people who in other circumstances might be quite human. Burger's Daughter and July's People are regarded as the most complex works by Gordimer. Gordimer's novel, The Pickup, published in 2002, is an award-winning novel dealing with the diasporic issues of displacement, dislocation and alienation. At the same time, it talks about love and humanity, and the astounding ability of some people to transcend the divisions of religion, economic differences and still retain their humanity. The novel is the love story of a financially comfortable white woman, Julie Summers, and an illegal Arab immigrant in South Africa, Abdu. They marry, but because of the denial of a visa, they are forced to go back to the Arab world where Abdu hails. The cultural shock and the subsequent alienation that Julie experiences constitute the rest of the novel. Published in 2005, Get a Life is the story of a man who is undergoing treatment for cancer. The required radiation therapy causes him severe pain. Being an ecologist, he has been battling the installation of a nuclear plant. The novelist investigates the question of how to integrate political activism within one's everyday life. Gordimer wrote this novel after the death of her husband, Reynaud Cassirer, and it was inspired by his life. Besides the Nobel Prize, Gordimer was honored with numerous other prestigious international awards. Some of the others are the Booker Prize, the Conversationist in 1974, the W. H. Smith Commonwealth Literary Award in 1961, by England, the James Tate Black Memorial Prize in 1972, by Scotland, the CNA Prize Central News Agency Literary Award in 1974, 1980 and in 1991, the Grand Égal d'Or in 1975 by France, Modern Language Association in 1982 by United States, Roman Prize in 1984, Premio Malaparte in 1985 from Italy, Nelly Sachs in 1986 by Germany, Bennett Award in 1987 by United States, the Commonwealth Writers' Prize for the Best Book from Africa for her novel The Pickup in 2002. She was also honored with the honorary degrees from various universities worldwide and was a member of many international bodies. She was a fearless writer and a voice of conscience for almost half a century. Now, let me introduce Mariama Bâ. Born on April 17, 1929 in a Senegalese Muslim family in Dakar, Senegal. She was an author and feminist with a large part of her work written in French. Living in traditional African society, she experienced immense gender discrimination since childhood. From an early age, she started opposing gender-based equalities in her society and faced a lot of criticism for doing so. Raised by her grandparents and due to her traditional family background, she had to struggle hard to acquire education, since education for girls was frowned upon. Bâ married a member of Parliament of Senegal, Obiya Diop Tall, but this relationship was not successful, and they later divorced after leaving 9 children for her to look after. Life had been very hard for her, and she died on August 17, 1981 due to illness. In her debut novel, So Long a Letter, she expressed her feelings regarding the status of women in African society and also her ultimate acceptance of the inequalities and injustice prevailing in her society. The novel is a reflection of the sorrows and resignation of a woman who is facing the rejection of her husband and sharing the mourning of his death with his second and younger wife. The novel also throws light on the woman's role in post-colonial Africa and is often used in literature classes. According to Abiola Irel, So Long a Letter is the most deeply felt presentation of female condition in African fiction. It was awarded the first African Noma Prize in 1980 and has been translated into many languages around the world. In the book, Bâ has depicted the enormous contribution which African women have made to their societies. She was greatly inspired by Nafissatou Niang Diallo, a writer who created strong women characters in her writings and who was a friend and mentor who supported Bâ in building up her confidence. Diallo's influence is visible in her writings in the writings of Bâ and in her portrayal of the leading female characters in her novels. The novel is based on exploring feminism and articulates the voice of marginalized and suppressed women in the African continent. Women are subjugated socially and traditionally by culture and religion through various norms and customs. Originally written in French, it is a semi-autobiographical and epistolary novel, as is indicated by the title of the book. The novel starts with the protagonist Rahmatullah Alayhi Fall, a widow writing a letter to her childhood friend Asitau, who is an African immigrant and resides in the United States. The reason behind writing the autobiographical letter is the sudden death of her husband Madhav Fall due to a heart attack and consequently her becoming a widow. As is customary of a Muslim, she has to remain in seclusion, miras, for a period of 4 months and 10 days. The letter reconstructs the major events of her life and contains a description of the miseries and she has borne during her life and the details of her relationship with her husband. Both Rahmatullah and Asitau reject patriarchal restrictions. Though Rahmatullah tries to adjust with the situation she finds herself in after her husband's second marriage, her friend Asitau's for her own freedom. Asitau rejects everything which comes in the way of her freedom, and inspired by her, Rahmatullah too realizes that she can't go on living a suppressed life defined by her culture. Bâ believed that women should have confidence in themselves and trust their capabilities, and they would be rewarded with success. Though they have to face many hurdles in their lives in various forms, they should not give up or be defeated by them. Instead, they should try and overcome them. They have to caliber to excel in every field like men, and they can do this when they realize their own strength. In So Long a Letter, she has depicted the struggles that women face in bringing up their families and protecting them in their time of calamities. Through her novel, she has given a message to all women of the world to take responsibility for their own lives, irrespective of which society they belong. Referring to her love for her books, Bâ said, "They enabled you to better yourself. What society refused you, they granted." Her second novel, Scarlet Song, was published posthumously after her death in 1986. The novel is an interesting story of two lovers belonging to two ethnic groups. In the novel, the two star-crossed lovers are depicted fighting with the tyranny of customs and tradition which stand in their way. Besides these two novels, she also wrote in French La Fonction Politiques des Littérateurs African Critiques, The Political Function of Women Literature, published in 1981, in which she has shared her thoughts and feelings very candidly. Yet another writer, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, was born on 15 September 1977 in Nigeria. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is a novelist, short story and non-fiction writer. Recipient of the MacArthur Genius Grant, James Copnell referred to Adichie in the Times Literary Supplement as the most prominent of a procession of critically acclaimed young Anglophone authors that is succeeding in attracting a new generation of readers to African literature. Adichie started her career by publishing her poetry anthology Decisions in 1997, followed by a play For Love of Biafra in 1998. She wrote the famous story That Harmattan Morning, which won her much critical attention. She has won several awards, including the BBC Short Story Awards in 2003, O. Henry Prize for American Embassy, and the David T. Long International Short Story Prize by PEN Center Award in 2002 and again in 2003. Some of her works include Purple Hibiscus 2003, Half of a Yellow Sun published in 2006, You in America published in 2006 again, The Thing Around Your Neck published in 2009, One World, a Global Anthology published in 2009, Americana 2013, We Should All Be Feminists published in 2014 and Imitation published in 2015. Set in post-colonial Nigeria, a time when the country was witnessing political instability and financial backwardness, Adichie's maiden novel Purple Hibiscus has been well received. The protagonist of the novel is Kambili Achike, a 15-year-old girl of a wealthy family. Achike's father, Eugene, is a religious zealot, a devout Catholic. He is also given to violence, psychological and physically tortures his family, his daughter, his son Jaja, and particularly his wife Beatrice. He creates a violent environment in the house, and the story narrated by Kambili shows that her family disintegrates because of the tyrannical behavior of her father. It is also the story of coming of age of Kambili and the struggle she has undergone to evolve into a mature person. Kambilini and her brother spend time at the paternal aunt Ifona's house with her and her 3 children. Living in her aunt's household, sister and brother experience a new feeling of freedom, love and care, which is marked contrast to what they have experienced in their own household. Their aunt's household is also Catholic, but unlike her father's house, it is a happy one, with liberal ideas encouraging the family members to put forward their opinions in front of each other. Living in such an atmosphere, Kambili and Jaja become more confident and open and are able to give their opinion on various issues. In her aunt's house, Kambili falls in love with a young priest, Father Amadi, who awakens her sexual awareness of herself. But at this juncture, an unusual thing happens in Kambili's family, as her mother Beatrice, who is unable to tolerate her husband's violence any longer, poisons him. Jaja, in trying to save his mother, takes the blame on himself and is taken to prison. On the other hand, her aunt Ifeoma is dismissed from her job at her University of Nigeria and decides to immigrate to America with her children. 3 years after all these events, her brother Jaja is about to release from the prison, and Kambili has become a confident woman of 18 years. Unfortunately, her mother Beatrice has been too deeply affected by the prolonged ill treatment of her husband and is psychologically permanently scarred. The novel ends on a cautiously optimistic note. Her second novel, Half of a Yellow Sun, has a unique title, and it is named after the birth of Biafra, which was a short-lived nation. The story is set before and during the Nigerian Civil War and became so popular that it has its cinematic adaptation, a film directed by B.E. Bandale with the same title. The movie was released in 2014, starring some very popular actors. Her third book is a collection of short stories, The Thing Around Your Neck, published in 2009, which is widely read and has been included in the syllabi of many countries. Adichie has won many international distinctions and awards and is an outstanding young novelist with much promise. She says, "I think to myself as a storyteller, but I would not mind at all if someone were to think of me as a feminist writer. I am very feminist in the way I look at the world, and that worldview must somehow be the part of my work. Women writers like Nadine, Gordimer, Mariama Bâ, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, though from 3 different countries of Africa, are bound by their moral and social concern for humankind, irrespective of gender, class and ethnic groups. They are trailblazers and women of courage who address some of the most contentious issues of our times and articulate the voice of the African woman. For further references, I would suggest students to read African Literature by Joseph Gordon, Understanding Contemporary Africa, Ali Al-Mazuri's The Development of Modern Literature since 1935, Newman Judy's Nadine Gordimer, Berger's Daughter Casebook, published by Oxford University Press, Nadine Gordimer and the South African Experience by Watsberg, Boundaries by Anuradha Kumar, and Nadine Gordimer, the web source, Donald Morrison, Time Magazine, Nadine Gordimer's Nancy Topping Seymour, Marilyn Darmel, ed. Conversations with Nadine Gordimer, Bram Fisher, Human Rights Program, Wits School of Law, and African Collection, a web resource found at the website cited, and Nixon Robb's The African Story. These are my humble submissions. Thank you.